Anna had a calendar. A big one. I'm talking the old school, wall-hogging kind with boxes the size of a post-it note collection and little seasonal doodles in the margins. Snowmen in January, barbecues in July, a pumpkin with unnecessary eyelashes in October. It was her holy relic. Color-coded, too. Blue for appointments, green for bills, pink for self-care, and red for anything involving her daughter from her first marriage, which meant I only ever saw red when tuition was due. She'd hover over that calendar every Sunday night like she was commanding a NASA launch, pen in one hand and a glass of Merlot in the other, always half full, always with a wine charm shaped like a musical note, because Anna once sang in a community theater version of Grease and never quite came down from the high of being a chorus girl in a pink wig. She took scheduling seriously. It gave her life texture, she said. I said it gave me anxiety. Anyway, that calendar is where this all starts. Not a text, not a phone call, not some lipstick on a collar moment straight out of a bad soap opera. Nope, just one strange little square on Anna's precious calendar. Wednesday the 14th, Meadow Lane. For PM, return key? I stared at it for maybe 20 seconds, standing in the hallway with my coffee mug in one hand and a mismatched sock in the other. Return key. 3 question marks? The woman who once scolded me for putting a question mark in a text, it sounds passive-aggressive, had casually tossed a full set of them onto her holy calendar like confetti. Now, I'm not a naturally suspicious person. I didn't grow up reading detective novels or watching those crime shows where everyone has access to satellite surveillance. But I am, by the grace of God and 2 failed group projects in college, excellent at overthinking. So I did what any reasonable man would do. I Googled Meadow Lane. Turns out, it's not a shop, or a salon, or some charming boutique filled with overpriced candles and regret. No, it's a residential street. A very residential street about 20 minutes across town, filled with aging bungalows and the kind of mailboxes that lean sideways like they're trying to escape their responsibilities. That's when I knew something was off. Anna doesn't do residential unless there's a home goods involved, and definitely not with a key she needs to return. I didn't say anything right away. That would have been far too mature. Instead, I watched her all week with the quiet intensity of a man who once lost a fantasy football league by 0.4 points. I noticed things. She hummed more. Not in a happy way, more like someone trying to fill silence with noise before their brain starts asking questions. And she started wearing her Thursday pants on Wednesdays. Now, I know that sounds unimportant, but let me tell you something. Anna had a full routine for her wardrobe. I'd never met someone who could label an outfit based on weekday energy. She had Monday optimism blouses, Tuesday try-again cardigans, and those ridiculous, overly confident Thursday pants that fit a little too well and made her walk like she was in a music video set at an accounting firm. Wearing them on a Wednesday? It was like seeing a giraffe wearing sneakers. You just knew the world had tilted a bit. So I followed her. Yes, like a sitcom husband who's about 5 episodes away from an epiphany. I even borrowed my cousin's old Nissan, a car so forgettable it might as well come with a cloaking device, and drove the 20 minutes to Meadow Lane, coffee thermos tucked between my knees like a co-pilot. I parked a few houses down and waited. And she came, right on time, not in a trench coat or anything dramatic. Just Anna, in her Thursday pants and sunglasses that were 2 years out of style, but still made her feel important. She pulled into the driveway of a beige house that looked like it had stopped caring sometime during the Bush administration. Got out. Walked up like she'd been there 100 times. Used a key. Walked in. And that was it. No curtains twitching. No dramatic entrances. Just Anna walking into someone else's house with the ease of someone who's used to being expected. Now here's the fun part. I didn't confront her. Not then. I just sat there, finished my coffee, and wrote down the address like I was in some low-budget indie film. Then I drove to the nearest hardware store, bought a measuring tape and some gloves, and went home. I wasn't plotting anything. I just needed time. Space. Preferably one with snacks. A few days later, I visited the house on Meadow Lane. In broad daylight. Knocked on the neighbor's door. House number 419. A guy in his 70s opened it, wearing socks with sandals and the universal face of someone who's seen too many leaf blowers in his life. I asked, casually, if the folks at number 421 had been living there long. He squinted, looked past me at the beige house, and said, "You mean Ed's place?" Ed. Of course his name was Ed. Nice guy, he added. Real handy. Lost his wife 2 years ago. Teaches carpentry at the community center. Carpentry. I could almost hear Anna swooning. And does he live alone? I asked, fully aware of how creepy I sounded. The neighbor nodded. Far as I know. Lot of lady visitors lately, though. Mostly one. Real chatty. Drives a white SUV. Anna drives a white SUV. I thanked him, said I was thinking of buying in the neighborhood, a bold lie, and left with a polite wave and a mind racing like a kid on sugar. Back home, Anna was baking. Baking. She only bakes when she's either avoiding something or about to ask me to paint a wall. This time, it was snickerdoodles. A cookie that pretends to be festive while silently judging you. She smiled. Surprise. Thought you deserved something sweet today. Oh, I said, any reason? She shrugged. Just felt like it. Now, I didn't say anything that night either. I ate the cookies. I complimented her cinnamon to sugar ratio. But deep down, I was cataloging everything. Her too careful smile. The way she over-explained her Pilates class. The nervous tap of her foot whenever I mentioned the weekend. Anna was unraveling. And she had no idea I was already holding the thread. I didn't catch her with texts. Or lipstick. Or cliché. I caught her with a calendar entry, a pair of pants worn on the wrong day, and a neighbor with excellent observation skills. The pieces were on the table now. I just needed to decide what kind of game I wanted to play. On the following Monday, I took the day off work, which in my case just meant not replying to emails until someone noticed I wasn't replying to emails. I work remotely, like every other emotionally exhausted American pretending to love flexibility, while secretly just wanting a quiet life with fewer group video calls and less exposure to people who say circle back. Anna had gone out, naturally. Something about meeting with a friend for a self-care walk. That's what she called it now. Not going for a walk, but a self-care walk. Because apparently regular walking wasn't meaningful enough without branding it like a yoga class. Once the door clicked behind her, I stood in the hallway for a few seconds, staring at the key rack. Hers was missing, probably sitting on the kitchen counter at Ed's place, next to a set of coasters and a really proud piece of driftwood art. I went to the drawer she pretended I wasn't allowed to open. She called it the random stuff drawer, which was ironic since it was about as random as an airport security checkpoint. Batteries in one tray, twist ties in another, an entire subsection for old phone chargers, and enough tape to mummify a family of 4. But I wasn't here for order. I was here for her second phone. Yes, Anna had a second phone. Not in the fun, spy thriller way. In the this was supposed to be a backup in case she ever lost the real one, but mysteriously never got lost way. I found it wrapped inside an old sweatshirt from her Zumba phase. The phone was off. Of course it was off. I plugged it in using one of her obsessively labeled chargers, USB, backup drawer, and waited. When the screen lit up, I expected a password, maybe facial recognition. But apparently Anna trusted her own organizational system more than technology. No password. Open access. She probably figured no one would dare touch a backup phone that lived under synthetic fleece with a faded rhinestone slogan that said, "Feel the beat, not defeat." It only took a few taps. She wasn't smart about it, which honestly surprised me. She'd been clever with everything else. The calendar entry, the wardrobe, the fake Pilates storylines with more plot holes than a late-season drama reboot. The messages were boring. Not even full sentences, just lazy thumbs and half-thoughts. A lot of you up, S, and CUTMW, S, and the occasional emoji she used ironically, which made it worse. Who cheats and uses emojis sarcastically? Anna, apparently. But I wasn't really here to read the love notes. I was looking for the punchline. The part where this all spiraled beyond ridiculous into something I could use. Something that would make the weird math equation in my brain make sense. That came in the form of a group chat titled Thursdays LOL. She wasn't just seeing Ed. She had meetings. Rotating ones. Different houses. Different guys. Or as she called them, therapy partners. Like Betrayal needed a business card. Each name in the chat had a weekday. Ed was Wednesday. A guy named Terry was Monday. And someone just saved as C was Friday. I suppose Tuesday was a rest day. Self-care, probably. There were notes too. Schedules, availability, even commentary. I read one where she mentioned Ed cooked too often, and another where she wrote, C has strong opinions about throw pillows. The most offensive part? She rated them like she was reviewing takeout. Stars and all. Ed had 3 stars and a note that said, reliable but not exciting. It hit me, not with drama or heartbreak or tears, but with the numb awareness that I'd married someone who managed betrayal the way other people manage spreadsheets. And just like that, I was bored of it. The whole thing. The messages, the sloppy code names, the tiny betrayals stacked like Jenga pieces by someone who genuinely believed she was doing something brave by calling it exploration. So I did what any deeply irritated man with a backup phone and a quiet house would do. I took pictures, screenshots, all of it, group chats, calendar screenshots, even the conversation where she asked one of them to move his potted plant because the aesthetic is killing my mood. After that, I turned off the phone, wrapped it back up in the Zumba sweatshirt, and slid it into the drawer. I didn't need it anymore. I had what I needed. Not proof. Anna wouldn't respond to that. She'd turn it into some abstract discussion about monogamy being a social construct. No, what I had wasn't leverage. It was material. Because what Anna didn't know was that our neighborhood association, the one she always complained about for having too many rules and not enough vision, had an email newsletter. Monthly. Dry as toast. Read by no one. Run by 3 retired women who printed it on pastel paper and insisted on delivering it door to door. And thanks to a brief moment of weakness at the last 4th of July picnic, plus 2 glasses of warm sangria, I had been roped into editing it. Suddenly, that newsletter felt more interesting than ever. Now, before anyone clutches their pearls, I didn't expose her. I didn't use names. I'm not a monster. But I did write an essay for the front page. It was titled Modern Scheduling, a case study in community commitment, and it detailed, with remarkable accuracy, how one hypothetical neighbor had managed to squeeze 3 appointments a week into her calendar under the guise of wellness. It was satirical, of course, academic tone, light-footed, slightly smug, the kind of writing that makes the reader laugh before realizing they're uncomfortable. I left a printed copy on the kitchen counter next to her favorite planner, open to Thursday. I highlighted a specific paragraph, the one that said, "When we map our commitments, we often reveal more than we intend. Sometimes a color-coded square is just a lunch. Sometimes it's a midlife existential crisis wearing expensive leggings." I left it there and went to work. Actual work. The kind that paid bills and didn't involve cross-referencing betrayal with a map of local streets. That evening, Anna walked in, sunglasses still on indoors because, again, she's that kind of person. She froze in the kitchen, staring at the newsletter. I didn't say anything, just kept scrolling through an article about home office ergonomics while sipping a lukewarm cup of ambition. "Did you write this?" she finally asked. "No," I said. "I just edited it." Subtle difference. She read the paragraph again. The air was weird, not tense, not awkward, just still, like even the furniture was curious how she'd react. "This is mean," she said eventually, folding the paper in half. "I prefer the term informative," I replied. She didn't argue. She didn't deny. She just walked into the living room and sat on the couch like it was Tuesday and none of it mattered. Which, in a way, it didn't. She wasn't going to apologize. That wasn't Anna's style. She was going to wait until it blew over and then act like we'd had a small creative disagreement. And I was going to let her for now, because the show wasn't over yet. Not even close. The last time Anna and I sat across from each other in the same room without looking like 2 coworkers stuck in the world's most awkward carpool was probably 4 months ago. Since then, most of our conversations had been rerouted through the great communications buffer of modern marriage, shared Google calendars, and passive-aggressive post-its. So, when I came home that Friday and found her at the dining table, not on her laptop, not on her phone, but just sitting there with that eerie posture that only happens when someone's planning to talk, it was like spotting a neighbor you never talked to suddenly waving at you from across the street. You know it's coming, and it's probably not going to be about your lawn. There was a whiteboard in front of her, one of those rolling ones she used to bring out during Vision Weeks, which were exactly as unbearable as they sound. I hadn't seen it since the era of her brief obsession with productivity hacks, when she labeled our kitchen drawers zones and made a seating chart for Thanksgiving, even though there were only 5 of us. The board had columns. She was holding a marker. This was not a good sign. "You're home early," she said, like I'd just wandered in from battle and not from a dentist appointment that ended ahead of schedule. "I live here," I said, hanging up my keys. She gestured to the chair across from her, like she was the manager of a very small, emotionally complex startup and I was about to get performance reviewed. I want to talk, she said, but efficiently. So I made a structure. Of course she did. The whiteboard had 3 columns. The first one said what we know. The second said what we feel. The third said what's next. There were bullet points already, which made it worse. She tapped the first column with her marker. What we know, she read, as if she were unveiling ancient scrolls, is that something is broken. Well, I said, not your marker. That one's still going strong. She ignored me and continued. And I think we both know things haven't been right for a while. We're disconnected. I waited to see if she was going to mention the part where she connected herself quite thoroughly to several other people. But no, apparently that wasn't on today's agenda. And you feel, she went on, pointing to column 2. Disrespected, I imagine. Unheard. Unappreciated. I wrote some possibilities here, but feel free to edit. She handed me the marker like this was some kind of therapy improv game. I took it, uncapped it, and stared at the whiteboard. I wrote, under what we feel. Curious, slightly entertained, ready for an unscheduled intermission. An aside, the kind of sigh people usually reserve for malfunctioning printers and relatives who forward conspiracy theory emails. Can you be serious for 5 minutes? You brought out a whiteboard, I said. This ship sailed. She stood, paced once around the chair, and finally said, fine. You want direct? Let's be direct. She pulled something out of the side pocket of her tote. Not evidence, not a dramatic letter, but a laminated index card. Because why not? Because when your wife is moonlighting as a motivational speaker with a side gig in structured delusion, anything goes. The card read, connection requires honesty. At the bottom was a tiny logo, some coaching brand she probably found in the back of a podcast. I went to a workshop, she said, as if that explained everything. And the speaker said that every relationship needs a reset point. You mean like when people hit restore factory settings? Yes, exactly. Except without deleting the important stuff. Which part do you consider important? I asked. The weekday rotation system or the group chat feedback loops? That got her attention. She froze. You went through my phone? I went through your drawer, I said. The phone was just wrapped in a sweatshirt that smelled like self-importance. Her face went blank for a second. Not panicked. Not guilty. Just blank. Like her brain was rebooting with new instructions. So you know, I know you have very specific opinions about potted plants. She sat down again, carefully, straightened the edges of the whiteboard like it was still relevant. Okay, she said. Then let's stop pretending. I did what I did. You know. And now we need to talk about how to move forward. I was quiet for a second, then leaned back in the chair and crossed my arms. Out of curiosity, I said, what part of group scheduling betrayal do you think qualifies as a good foundation for moving forward? I didn't do it to hurt you, she said, like that clarified everything. No, you did it to organize your extracurriculars. There's a difference. I was trying to find myself. Well, you certainly outsourced the search party. She looked tired now, or maybe just annoyed that her strategy session hadn't turned into a TED Talk. Anna liked tidy conclusions. Narratives she could tie off with bullet points and a downloadable worksheet. This conversation wasn't giving her that. I wanted something different, she said finally. You got it. I didn't mean for it to be. You managed a rotation schedule. Don't pretend it was spontaneous. Silence again. She picked up the marker, uncapped it, then capped it again. I had this sudden, irrational urge to count how many dry erase markers we actually owned and donate them all to someone less emotionally convoluted. I think, she said slowly, we should go to therapy. You think a therapist is going to applaud your PowerPoint? I'm being serious, Justin. I know. That's the problem. She dropped the marker. It rolled across the table and landed near the edge, wobbled, and stopped. She stared at it like it had betrayed her, too. Do you want to stay married or not? She asked. That should have been a heavy question, but it landed about as hard as a weather update. I want to live in a house without strategic deception and dry erase boards, I said. So I guess the answer is, not if this is what it takes. Her face didn't fall. That was the thing about Anna. She didn't crumble. She just reorganized. A new tab opened in her mind, probably labeled Exit Strategy. I'm sorry it happened this way, she said. No, you're sorry it ended this way. Big difference. We sat there for a moment. The board between us like an artifact from a civilization that collapsed under the weight of its own motivational slogans. Then she stood, walked over, and erased the board. Column by column. No drama. No explanation. Just a clean sweep. And I said nothing. Because there wasn't anything left to say. She left the room. I stayed in the chair, watching the whiteboard until it was just white. Blank. Waiting for someone to fill it with something that made sense again. I didn't pick up the marker. Anna believed in shared responsibility, which in her case meant she was responsible for the decisions and I was responsible for the consequences. Our marriage was, in hindsight, a very long group project where she was the self-appointed team leader and I was the guy who showed up with a stapler and got blamed for the formatting. So when she suggested, during the Great Whiteboard Summit, that we should handle this like adults, I assumed it meant I'd be left to vacuum the emotional rubble while she took a mindfulness seminar and shopped for ceramic bowls that inspire calm. I decided I was done with her version of adulthood. I was going to try mine. Step 1. I created a spreadsheet. Now before you roll your eyes, let me be clear. This wasn't an emotional breakdown disguised as an Excel file. I wasn't logging feelings. I was logging facts. Specifically, a list of everyone in our lives Anna had not yet disappointed, lied to, or vaguely categorized under energy drain in her notes app. It was a short list, but it did include the most important people for what I had in mind. The couples we used to host game nights with, the yoga neighbor she borrowed sage from but secretly disliked, and, my personal favorite, her boss, who still thought Anna was a devoted wife with a grounding presence at home, which is how she described me in her annual work self-assessment, because apparently that's what corporate America likes to hear. Step 2. I got organized. Not in the color-coded way that Anna did, but in the let's try controlled chaos way that made college group projects tolerable. I found the email list from our old housewarming party. It was buried in a folder called Justin's Stuff, which was ironic because the last time I checked, I hadn't voluntarily contributed to it. Then I drafted the email. Subject line, upcoming changes. No dramatic flair. Just vague enough to be clickable. The body read, Hi all. Just wanted to share a few updates now that Anna and I are heading in new directions. Many of you know us as a couple, but going forward, please reach out to each of us separately regarding social events, projects, or obligations. Also, if you're part of the Tuesday Book Circle or the Couples Trivia League, you may want to check the member list. Some people have been attending under, let's say, flexible circumstances. Wishing everyone a peaceful transition into this new season. Justin, no details. No finger-pointing. Just enough suggestion to cause the kind of chaos that doesn't leave fingerprints. I didn't send it to everyone. That would have been rude. I only sent it to 32 people, all strategically selected for maximum reach and minimum suspicion. People who live for vague drama and follow-up texts. People who say things like, "Did you hear about?" before their coffee even cools. Then I sat back and watched. You'd be amazed how fast a single paragraph can spread when it lands in the right inboxes. I had my first thinking of you text from someone I hadn't seen since our wedding reception within 15 minutes. By the end of the day, I'd received 4 phone calls, 2 awkward voicemails, and 1 cryptic Facebook message from a woman named Doreen who I swear we only met once at a wine and paint night. But the crown jewel came 2 days later, when Anna came home holding her phone like it had betrayed her. You sent an email, she said. No, I sent a courtesy update, I replied. To everyone. Not everyone. Just enough. She dropped her bag on the chair with a little more force than usual. Not that I was keeping score. But I was. People are asking questions, she said. Then it's working. Working. Yeah. I figured we were overdue for a little crowdsourced accountability. She stared at me. Not with rage, not even with shock. Just with the kind of tired irritation someone feels when their curated persona starts to leak at the seams. You're being petty. No, I said. I'm being productive. That part really got her. She always thought productivity was her trademark. Like being annoying with a purpose somehow made it noble. You're going to make me look like someone who needs a new calendar app? Possibly. She paced the room once and then turned on her heel. You don't get to weaponize people's curiosity, says the woman who ran a romantic rotation schedule like it was a monthly newsletter. I was figuring myself out. And now other people get to figure it out with you. Community involvement, it's all the rage. She didn't speak after that. She went upstairs, possibly to regroup, possibly to reformat the emotional budget she was definitely drafting in her head. I stayed on the couch and watched a video about how to fix a dripping faucet, not because I needed to, but because the sound of overly confident DIY hosts made the house feel balanced again. A week passed. Then came the phone call from her boss. Not to me, of course. To her. But I heard it. Anna, standing in the living room, trying to laugh off whatever confusion he'd heard from someone's wife's friend's cousin. Apparently, vague drama had reached the workplace, and there were questions. Not serious ones, just the kind that linger in break rooms and get repeated over team lunches. She hung up with that plastic smile she uses when things are crumbling, but she's still holding the glitter. "This is beneath you," she said. "I think you overestimate where I was to begin with." She didn't laugh. She rarely did when the joke was on her. Then came the final straw, though she'd never admit it was a straw at all. Someone in her coaching cohort, a phrase I never fully understood, reached out asking if she'd like to share her journey in a panel. It was pitched as an opportunity for radical transparency. Anna declined. She didn't like transparency unless she was in control of the lighting. And me? I was enjoying a new hobby. I'd started writing reviews. Not of restaurants or movies. Of experiences. Anna style. I kept them short. One-liners. I printed them out and kept them on the fridge. She saw them every day. Shared calendar integration. Limited functionality. Communication. Could benefit from patch updates. Customer loyalty. Inconsistent. Offers not honored. She never said anything about them, but she stopped using the fridge calendar. By the end of the month, she was quieter. Less performative. She no longer made phone calls in the kitchen with her back turned like she was in a commercial for long-distance plans. She walked slower, talked less, and spent a lot more time in the guest room with the door shut. Retaliation, as it turns out, doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be, well, scheduled. The living room had been rearranged. Not in the fun, spontaneous way where someone gets inspired by a decorating show and suddenly moves a couch mid-sentence. No, this was a tactical shuffle. The kind Anna pulled when she needed a new environment, but didn't want to deal with actual change. The coffee table had migrated 4 inches to the left. The plant was now near the window, but still dying. A basket had appeared, filled with neutral-tone magazines no one subscribed to. I noticed it all immediately because that's what you do when someone you live with is trying to look busy without doing anything of consequence. She was sitting on the arm of the couch, not in it, which was always her way of saying, "I'm open to discussion but ready to exit at any moment." There was a manila folder in her hands. A Tuesday folder. Let me explain. Anna had this habit of naming days according to their usefulness. Monday was reset. Wednesday was manage. Thursday was strategy. Tuesday was documentation. It was the day she paid bills, filed things, sorted old emails into new folders, and made sure receipts didn't end up in the trash accidentally on purpose, as she used to say while glaring at me. So if she was holding a folder on a Tuesday, it meant she was ready to sort something, possibly me. She tapped the edge of it like a substitute teacher about to explain that homework was non-negotiable. "I made a list," she said. "Of course you did." She handed it to me. Inside were 3 sheets of paper, each neatly printed, double-spaced, and, because it wouldn't be Anna without this, numbered with Roman numerals. At the top, shared assets, transitional options, and emotional priorities. "Is this a marriage or a merger?" I asked, flipping through it like I was about to pitch it to investors. "It's a framework," she said, "so we don't spiral. I think we passed spiraling 3 exits ago." She didn't laugh. She rarely did lately, unless someone else was telling the joke and it didn't involve her calendar habits. I scanned the first sheet. It was a list of things she assumed we'd negotiate in good faith. The couch, hers. The kitchen appliances, shared. The guest room desk, mine by default, whatever that meant. She'd even listed the Wi-Fi router. "You want to split the Wi-Fi?" "No," she said. "I just want to make sure one of us doesn't take it without informing the other. Remember the modem incident of 2019? You changed the password and went to brunch. That's not how I remember it." "Of course not. You wrote a 3-paragraph social media post about boundaries and tagged me." She closed her eyes for a moment, probably counting backward from 10 in Latin, or whatever method she'd picked up from her latest podcast about emotional intelligence. "I'm trying to be reasonable," she said. I handed her the folder back. "You're trying to look reasonable. There's a difference." She didn't like that answer, but she didn't argue it either. Just sat there with the folder back in her lap, like it was going to do the talking from now on. "I'm leaving," I said, not loud, Not dramatic, just like I was announcing I was done with a movie I didn't like halfway through. She blinked. You're what? Leaving. Moving out. You can keep your folders. I'll keep my ability to breathe in my own house. And where are you going? I have options. I didn't, but I figured I'd find some. A friend. A month-to-month rental. A place where I wasn't being evaluated like a quarterly report. You can't just go, she said. I can, I said. Watch. She stared at me, and I knew what was happening. She was recalculating, running the numbers in her head. The optics. The narrative. The loss of control. Why now, she asked. Why not talk about it? We've been talking. For weeks. You've brought out boards, files, lists, folders. At some point, I realized we weren't solving anything. We were project managing a breakup. That's unfair. No, I said, standing. Unfair was watching you reorganize your affairs like they were elective coursework while pretending the syllabus was just a suggestion. I never said. You didn't have to. You left everything just vague enough to stay in control. She stood now too, the folder still clutched in one hand like it might turn into a parachute. I didn't think it would end like this. You didn't think it would end at all. That was your mistake. She didn't cry. Anna didn't cry unless someone else was watching, and even then it was mostly strategic. I walked past her, down the hall, toward the bedroom. I didn't need much. I didn't even pack right then. I just needed her to understand that this wasn't a discussion anymore. When I returned, she was still in the same spot, still holding the folder. It was starting to look heavy now, like the weight of everything she didn't say had finally started seeping into the paper. You want to stay friends? She asked, not with hope, just with habit. No, I said. I want to stay honest. That seems harder. And that was it. No dramatic exit. No final dig. Just two people in a house that had run out of plans. I didn't slam the door. That would have been theatrical. I just closed it behind me and left the Tuesday folder where it belonged, with her. The apartment I ended up in was technically a one-bedroom, though bedroom might have been too generous. It was a rectangle with a door. That was enough. The listing called it efficient, which I assumed was a polite way to say it had no personality and just enough space for a chair, a laptop, and a slight emotional breakdown, if I stood. There was no grand move. I packed in under 2 hours, and by packed, I mean I dumped half my stuff into 3 grocery bags and left the rest to be negotiated later through whatever bureaucratic system Anna would invent by Thursday. She didn't try to stop me. I think she was in the middle of drafting a shared spreadsheet labeled Household Redistributables when she heard the front door close. The day after I left, I received a calendar invitation from her. I wish I was kidding. The subject line said, Optional check-in, logistics plus emotional clarity. I didn't respond, mostly because the idea of RSVPing to a conversation about our collapsed marriage made me want to unplug the internet. What surprised me most about the aftermath wasn't the quiet, or the weirdly satisfying click of the new apartment's crooked light switch, or even the fact that I didn't miss her right away. What surprised me was how fast people started treating me like I'd just been released from jury duty. Good for you, said one of my coworkers after hearing the vaguest possible version of events. I always got weird vibes from her. Right. The same coworker who once said Anna had Pinterest energy. Another sent me a message that just said, freedom tastes better with coffee. I wasn't sure if it was a quote, a passive-aggressive jab, or a new slogan for a beverage brand I hadn't heard of. My mom wanted to be supportive but ended up asking if I had checked in on my nutrition, which, in her language, meant, do you know how to feed yourself now that the woman who used to alphabetize your pantry is gone? But the best message came from Marcus, a guy I barely knew. He was one of those adjacent friends you never actually hang out with unless your real friends are busy. He texted, heard the news. If you ever need to borrow a toolbox or emotionally process through IKEA furniture, let me know. It was the most useful offer I'd received since the whole thing started. Anna, in true form, didn't go radio silent. That's not her style. Silence isn't productive. Silence doesn't generate graphs or bullet points. She emailed me a document labeled Unresolved Threads, which, by the way, could have doubled as a fashion newsletter if it weren't for the subcategories: household, financial, narrative. Yes, narrative. I printed it, just to have the joy of writing no in red pen next to every item. Meanwhile, the apartment started to feel lived in. Not cozy, not warm, just fine. That was enough. I bought a chair with exactly 0 lumbar support, but an honest price tag. I downloaded a budgeting app. I rearranged the bookshelf based on height and gave up halfway through. It looked chaotic, but I decided to call it eclectic if anyone asked. The silence, when it came, wasn't dramatic. It wasn't sad. It was just a little too neutral, like waiting in line at the DMV with no one talking. So I started leaving post-it notes on my own fridge. They weren't goals, just observations. Day 4. No one has discussed feelings before 9 a.m. Incredible. Day 7. Put trash out on the right day. Already a better roommate than Anna. Day 10. Wasn't corrected for using the wrong mug. Still feel judged, but it's probably just the mug. It helped. Not in a deep, life-changing way, but in the way that empty walls start to feel less like judgment and more like opportunity. I even found myself sleeping better, which was strange, considering the mattress was one of those budget models that promised spine alignment and delivered vague regret. After 2 weeks, Anna sent a final message. Subject line, closure attempt. She used the phrase mutually evolved disconnect, which sounded like something that should involve crystals or a ceremonial bowl. The email ended with, wishing you clarity, continued insight, and a rhythm that suits your personal expansion. It was the kind of sentence that makes you wonder if you accidentally joined a yoga cult. I replied, you too. That was the last time we communicated. Now, when people ask if I've moved on, I nod. Not because I've found someone new, or started journaling under string lights, or whatever people do when they reinvent themselves, but because moving on, in my case, meant recognizing that the person I married would have preferred a digital assistant with customizable responses and a dry erase function. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even confused. I was just done pretending that everything needed to be organized to be meaningful. Life is mostly random, often inefficient, and rarely categorized under neat little tabs labeled growth. I unsubscribed from all her shared calendars. I deleted every folder she ever sent. And I kept the post-it notes. Because they were honest. Because they made me laugh. Because for once, my life didn't need a framework. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel